Did we lose that game? No, we were playing the Strikers. Of course, we didn't lose that game. No way, we've got the top scorer in the league. We won that game. We totally won that game. We lost that game. How did we lose that game? That was against the Strikers. How did we did lose that game. How can this happen to us? Okay. I'm just gonna tweet at Bill Peterson. I won't insult him anymore. I'll just tell him that, and he'll overturn the ruling. He's a nice guy. He knows what's up. I mean, the goal was totally offside, so they have to give us another leg, and we'll be fine. We're gonna play again, and we'll be okay. Oh God, we lost. We're not gonna have a final next week. A crappy old lockhart, we won the cup, we filled it with Surly.
Hey, wake up, man.
Well, what's up, buddy?
How you doing? You holding up?
I think I'm gonna be okay, Kyle. I was in pretty bad shape last night, but I think I'm gonna be fine. I think it's gonna be okay.
Right, man. I'd love to hear that. You know, positive outlook on life, and just remember, we've only got to wait till next April for more United games.
We don't have to wait till April until next United games. No way, it's not until April. There's no way it's on April, man. There's no way. It's not April. Hey everybody, welcome to Two United Fans. I'm Nutch.
And I'm Kyle.
With us is Bill Steneros from the Loon Call. And Bill, why don't you tell us really quick what the Loon Call is?
Well, the Loon Call is a website that focuses on Minnesota soccer, the Minnesota United FC. We've got a great group of writers that write for us, Alex Schieferdecker, Chris Boyd, and a bunch of other people who submit and offer their thoughts and opinions and statistical analysis on how Minnesota United is doing or did this season.
Yeah, they've got some really great stuff up. I mean, I particularly liked their piece on Miguel Ibarra right when he got called up for the U.S. national team the first time. Alex just put out a great piece about what's next for Minnesota United. But before we get to that, and you should go check those out, by the way. If you're not reading the Loon Call every day, you're an idiot. I like saying that a lot, but you are an idiot if you don't go and check out what Bill and his crew are putting out there. But today we're here to discuss what happened this past Saturday. Sadly.
We gotta do it, guys. We promised we'd do it. We're doing it for you. We don't want to be here.
Yeah, so as you know, what happened was that Minnesota United FC played the championship semifinal against the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, and we ended up losing the game on penalties after tying and not being able to break the deadlock after extra time. The first goal was scored by Miguel Ibarra on a phenomenal chip on the 34th minute. There was a really controversial equalizer from Fort Lauderdale in the first minute of extra time. At the first minute of stoppage time, and that sent the game into extra time. Minnesota United lost a player, Jamie Watson, to injury, and we were playing with 10 men through the two halves of extra time. Went to penalties. Pitch missed his, and Strikers are off to the Soccer Bowl, which is being held in beautiful San Antonio this year.
Well, that's our show, guys. We talked through the game. I think I'm good. You guys
I'm good. Hey, Bill, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
No, but unfortunately, we're going to go into a little more depth. Talk a little bit more about what went on. Notch and I are going to take the opportunity to say what we liked, what we didn't like, pull out some things about the game, and we're hoping we get a little better advice about someone who knows some more about the game, about what kind of went on behind just what you'd observe as a fan.
I hope I can help.
We'll start out with the beautiful call that was...
The call.
The call. Just for a quick summary, and we'll try and throw some video up for you guys. There were two Fort Lauderdale players offside at the time the ball was kicked. They ended up kicking the ball into the goal. How can that possibly be an acceptable goal? Well, it went off the leg of a United player, and this is where the debate comes in about what a specific law of the game means.
Yeah, it basically the law states that if a ball is deliberately kicked by a defender to an offside player, that player is then judged to be onside. The ball was deflected off Kevin Venegas. I will maintain that it was deflected. It was not deliberately played. To be honest, if that is a deliberate play, you got that's defending. You try to keep the ball out of your your box. You try to get the ball away from your goal. If you can't even attempt to do that, I mean, what's the point? To me, the rule doesn't make any logical sense the way that it's been interpreted by the Professional Referees Association in the United States, and it's applied.
But beyond just if it makes sense or if we think it's right or not, I just want to get your take on, was it interpreted correctly? Is this a possible interpretation of the rule?
Well, Pro, the organization that manages the referees for the top two divisions in USSF soccer, has said this is the rule. And they came out with an article in support of the referee, and honestly, listening to their justification, the ref called it how he was supposed to call it according to his organization. Simon Borg of MLSsoccer.com has done a whole video explaining this ruling. Ultimately, it seems a real stretch to call that deliberate play. Reading the rules, the intent of that rule appeared to be so that you can't keep passing it back and forth to the goalie, and the defender can't make a play on the ball, and the offensive player can't make a play on that ball from an offside position, which that makes sense. You don't want people being able to just pass back the entire game.
Yeah.
You want people going forward, but the way they called it, I mean, he stuck his leg out, and that's apparently deliberate play.
I think, the other thing that was brought up with this decision was the fact that it happened after the Fort Lauderdale Strikers rushed the assistant or the referee and they mobbed him. I don't think I can take issue with them, and I don't think that's what made the decision. If you 9 out of 10 times, if you're a soccer player, you're in the 91st minute of a game that you just ostensibly died and it's a playoff game, you go and talk to the referee. And you know what? Minnesota's players, after the goal was given, went and mobbed the referee and stopped the play just like the Strikers did. The other thing is that you can see in the video, the ref is actually telling the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, just go ahead, just go ahead. He's not listening to anything they're saying. He's just saying, just leave me alone. I'm going to go confer with the ref. And he's made up his mind already as he walks to this assistant. So it's not, I don't think that he was influenced by the Strikers. I don't see anything wrong with what the Strikers did. Your emotions get the better of you. That's why sometimes the referee's got a card to pull,
Well, I think actually they did, and I think Minnesota also did, and honestly, it should be penalized because we shouldn't have teams constantly mobbing refs.
Yeah.
I mean, they're calling the game. They're going to make calls that a team disagrees with. MLS last year decided they'd make it a rule that they'd after the game they'd penalize teams that did this. Now we don't really hear much about it anymore because they really stopped emphasizing it. But I think it should be a point of emphasis. I think NASL should do something about this because the refs have a hard enough job. They shouldn't feel like they're being physically or their space is being threatened.
No, that's a really good point. One other thing I wanted to mention about this call is that really a lot of Minnesota Uniteds and the Dark Clouds and other Minnesota United fans they've stuck with this call as being the thing that robbed us of the soccer bowl, and that we beat Fort Lauderdale that day. But it was this call that destroyed us, and I just finished watching the game. I had my back to the game the whole 90. I didn't see anything when I was there, and so this is the first time I actually got to see what happened. And my views have changed a little bit.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the game now and kind of get into some good things, bad things we saw about it, and I think I saw some of it too, what Notch is talking about, and maybe you'll agree with us, maybe you won't at the end of it, but I don't think Minnesota had a quite as good of a game all around as I think we kind of had thought in our minds and the emotion right after the game. So to get started, and kind of jump right in, and one of the first things that jumps to my mind here is some of the chances that Fort Lauderdale had throughout the game. I think it was in the 6th or 7th minute, even just starting out, there was the goal off the woodwork where Fort Lauderdale was allowed to shoot and chipped Maddie and just went right off the work. And at the very beginning, a foot down on that, and it's 1-0 early in the game. Could be completely different. That nullifies any of the rest of the game, and we'd be having a completely different discussion. So I think we can start with some of the reasons why that happened. I know we've been talking a little bit beforehand about what some of the issues with the defense were. What are some things that you saw kind of early in the game and maybe things that developed later?
Well, I mean, in that instance, when I went back and I can't watch the game like you guys did. I commend you for watching that game again. But in the highlights, you can see we've got a very strong back four at that moment. Our midfield is missing in action. Anderson, the striker player, has tons of room, and so he can take the time to take a shot like that that just misses. And I think it comes to Vincentini. I felt like he had to have a great game, and he didn't, unfortunately. And that was one of those times where that man probably was his responsibility, and he wasn't there. And it happens. Vincentini's been fantastic for us almost the entire
Great
season.
player. Yeah.
And this just wasn't his game.
Well, and I mean, late in the game, in extra time, actually, there was another moment where he loses the ball to a striker right in the box, and the guy goes up against Maddie one-on-one. Maddie makes the save, but that was a moment where, if Maddie hadn't been there, we'd have lost the game. That was the game.
A better shot, and that should have probably been the game. And like we said, he's been a great player all year, and that kind of jumps to the next player, which would be Daniel Mendez, who has been another fantastic pickup by United this year. He's been creating a ton of offense, assists, goals. An off night again. I don't know if there's anything that United did different tonight that caused these two players, or if it's just one of those nights where it was an off game.
Vincentini just seemed to have an off game. I don't know. I did feel that Fort Lauderdale was pressuring more our back three when we had the ball. Vincentini, Calvano, and Diaz, and we have seen in the past. So, he had to be quicker with his passing. But Mendez, he was out a lot in the last month. I have a feeling that we might hear that there was an injury that he's been dealing with. That he just never got well enough, and he was hoping he could be the player he's been for Minnesota in this game. And
Strangely enough, actually, on the commentary, Buzz mentioned that he had an injury in training. So, score one for watching the game afterwards with the commentary on and not having your back to it. So that might be it. But he's not been himself for the last few games,
Well, and Vincentini's 33, I think. Calvano, another player who probably didn't have the greatest game, 33. Mendez is up there too. I mean, I think they might all be 33 years old. Because they played on a youth team together in Brazil, which is how they all kind of met and found each other. This has been a long season.
It's true.
It's been a very long season. And it wears on a player, and particularly when you're 33, being able to do that. And it does make you kind of wonder, was squad rotation where it needed to be earlier in the season to give these players the rest they needed? But at the same time, you got to win the game. You got to win it absolutely week in and week out. And so, we did.
And
recently.
And that's the thing with the playoffs, is that it's not really a test of, continued skill. It's not a test of, even of like short-term peak value. It's a test of endurance at that moment after you've played an entire season. Can you give it that additional little bit when it really counts? Speaking of age, and we've talked about some of the older players, but two guys that I thought had lights out the best game that of any player on the team were Ibarra and Venegas. Let's take Ibarra first. I mean, he's the guy who scored this beautiful chip. I mean, what a goal, right?
Unbelievable. I mean, it actually leaves the frame of the shot, and then it reappears, and there it is in the goal. And you're just like, how did you do that? It almost even looked like his back was slightly turned to the goal when he took the shot. I mean,
Just
it's
swiveled.
just,
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So let's talk through what happens, okay? First, the ball is in Minnesota United's box. You actually see Thiago kind of hit, and it's not clear from the angle because the long distance shot you can't really see. He hits Sean, I think his name is Sean Chin, and Chin goes down with maybe a head injury. We're not really sure what happens there, if it's just a dive, let's be honest. And the ball then goes to Minnesota. Minnesota gets it up to Ibarra. Ibarra sees the goalkeeper out of position, hits the chip, and then it goes into the goal. It was just beautiful positioning from Ibarra off the shot, and
it just fights the defender off. For a small guy, I think that was one of the impressive things for me. I couldn't tell you who the defender was, but he was a big boy. And Ibarra manages to get around in front of him, get enough of a position, which is still a great shot, but he got positioned to strike the ball, which was great. I mean, in most cases, if a big guy can hold him off and someone's not strong to get around him, that ball's cleared. It's kicked out somewhere.
And Ibarra had some good stuff later on in the game too, right?
Well, yeah, and I think talking about Venegas, talking about Ibarra, Fort Lauderdale played a 4-2-3-1. And the big thing to pay attention to there, they've got the 4 back line, but then they have 2 holding or defensive midfielders. Mm-hmm. And that means that center of the field is really congested. I think we saw that. Minnesota struggled to get anything going down the middle of the field. Where we had success was those runs down the side. Ibarra had a ton of just beautiful runs where he just springs with the ball and it's wide open. There's one person out there for Fort Lauderdale, and all he has to do is beat that one person, and he's in on goal. And same thing with Venegas. I mean, Mendez, although he didn't have a great game, was able to occupy that player enough. The Venegas just always had tons of room to come forward, make good crosses in or passes, and find the open person.
I'll just also mention, I think Greg Jordan had a good game too, but one person who I think was a little bit more anonymous, and watching the game, I was thinking was just nowhere near the quality we've seen him before, was Christian Ramirez. Kyle, I think you're with me on this one.
Yes, and just bringing up the point about the defense and the formation is something that I didn't think about beforehand, where he has, a lot more occupying that center space, which can give him maybe an out to what we're saying, but I don't think it can be argued either that he was the force that he's been all year. I mean, did he have an impact on the game? At best, you can say he occupied people in the middle and let the sides run. But him as an individual player, as an attacking forward, being able to hold up the ball, get shots on frame, I don't think so. Did he have more than just the header that Ibarra sent in?
He had a couple of moments. I think that was late in the game, and then early on, right before he went off, he was substituted for Campos. Before that, he had a few moments, but early on in the game, he was losing possession. He was giving up the ball a lot. When the ball came to him, he wasn't able to make something happen. Like, the bicycle, or there's the goal in San Antonio in our first game of the season where he just makes something happen from nothing, and it just it goes in. And we didn't see that from him this time.
No, we didn't. I mean, he I'm sure was not thrilled with his performance, but at the same time, you look at the formation they played. There were possibly 4 people that could guard him. It's tough to beat 4 people in soccer, and I think the other thing that needs to be said is our midfielders, those central midfielders, just have not looked like they've been able to, for the last month, 2 months even, link up well with Ramirez. Mm-hmm. Ramirez and Ibarra just play off each other so fantastically. And it really seemed like what Fort Lauderdale wanted to do was they're going to shut down Ramirez, they're going to let Ibarra run, and just hope that their goalie can stop the shots that Ibarra takes at a tough angle from out wide, and their defenders can stop the passes that Ibarra might make back to Ramirez in the center of the field, and I think that happened.
Yep.
So one of the things that maybe you can enlighten me a little bit on too is that one of the things I noticed is up until about the 50th minute or a little bit after that, Minnesota seemed like they were in control. Like they had a lot of possession, they were making some great attacks happen, and then something switched and you saw Fort Lauderdale suddenly getting a lot more. The ball was turning over to them a lot faster. They were just going at it a lot. I noticed a lot of offsides happening before the call. And there was actually a disallowed goal. I think in the 66th minute or so, there was another disallowed goal. It was a clear offside. A lot of Fort Lauderdale people on Twitter saying, "Oh, the later goal was karma for this." No, that one you can see the line. There's actually a line on the grass that like is the difference between the defender's foot and the Fort Lauderdale striker's foot. Fort Lauderdale striker, the striker of the Fort Lauderdale striker's foot, and it's offside. But was that? Am I seeing that accurately?
You're absolutely seeing it accurately. I think Fort Lauderdale knew they needed to get the ball back, and Minnesota has done this in the past where they go up a goal and they spend most of the second half sitting back, packing the box, just hoping to hang on. And unfortunately, that central three of Calvano, Diaz, and Vicentini, who had been so rock solid for so much of the season, you just saw Fort Lauderdale targeting them with runs through right up the center, passes directly through those lanes, in between or just to the sides of Diaz and Calvano. There were a number of times where Fort Lauderdale had a chance to score, and they didn't. And you knew that's what their game plan was: attack that spot in the field.
So let's talk about. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of what comes next year, because that's, I think, something that we'd like to cover later on in another episode when we reflect more on what we can change in the future. But let's talk about what we could have done in this game to neutralize the strategy that the strikers went in with. So what were some of the things, if you had your run of the team starting at 6 p.m. at Nessie this past Saturday, what would you have done differently, knowing what you know now, and knowing that hindsight is 2020? We're not blaming anybody.
You are Manny with the time machine.
I'm not Manny. Manny and Carl Craig. I mean, they know the team. They have a much deeper sense of soccer than I do. However, at the same time, I view Jordan as our super sub. Imagine if he had come on in the 60th or 70th minute and we had gone into extra time. Man, that would have been a player you want. He's running all over the place. He's making good tackles and just making that center a different space when he comes on. I would have put Pitch back even with Vicentini. We saw lots of players this season struggle when they were the single holding or defensive midfielder. It's a lot of pressure, particularly the way NASL teams play with a lot of counters, and trying to play up the middle of the field. You got to lock that down first, in my mind. So that would have been the two things, and the third thing would be Ibarra in the center. I know we saw some fantastic runs from Ibarra, and he's so fast, and he's so great on the wing. But I think Ramirez was missing that link-up play that he had with Ibarra in the middle.
Just one really quick point before we move on. Do want to mention, it was a very physical game. There was actually one moment where Antonievich from the strikers just shouldered Christian when the ball wasn't anywhere near them. The only two people in the Fort Lauderdale box, and Christian just gets a boot from Antonievich. There were a few other bad-tempered moments. The coach got actually ejected, didn't he?
It's true.
Oh my gosh. You have to remember, this is the coach that got forcibly removed from the Edmonton Stadium because he wouldn't stop making it obvious that he was communicating, talking to the assistant coach that took over for him last season. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you got to give credit that he took a team that, without a lot of stars, without a lot of money behind it, and brought them to the championship. Almost like a Manny from 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but you just don't do the kind of things that he does. I mean, it took him a minute to get off the field.
So the first thing that got him angry was the Sean Chin thing. Play didn't stop. Actually, Ibarra scored right after Sean Chin went down. He explained it in his halftime interview that it was because he thought it was a head injury. The game should be stopped. There were a few other of the bad-tempered moments that he got really mad at. Pretty sure there was one point where he rushed onto the field, and that's the moment at which I've expected a coach to get ejected immediately. When you leave your technical area, that's one thing, but when you go onto the pitch. But it was late in the second half, I believe, when the incident you just mentioned happened, where he actually got ejected. He's made to walk away, where in Minnesota, you don't get to go into the stands. Maybe some of you watch the Premier League where Jose Mourinho has been sent into the stands and he sits there kind of, and the camera sits on him like watching the game like this. That doesn't happen in Minnesota. In Minnesota, you go back to the dressing room, you're done. And Angie Blaker, who works for the team, you can see her, like there's footage, she's walking him back and he keeps like, he takes off his jacket at one point and then he keeps wasting time. It was like, he's a little dumpered guy. I mean, he needs to cool it a little bit.
Yeah.
But coaching well. So I think we've covered a lot about the game. I don't know if there's much to be said about the penalty kicks. My opinion about PK is I don't have a better solution to end the game, but it's a coin flip in my mind. The better team, you can have a Premier League team against a rec league, and the rec league can beat them any day. It's just a lot of, I mean, I almost throw even the skill out the window. It's a lot of luck that goes into it. So
I've with the World Cup this summer and a lot of the games ending in PKs. There were some articles about it, and one guy said whether or not PKs are a good way to end it. That's how they're ending games and tournaments right now, and games and playoffs. And you got to practice them. And it is a skill. Right now it seems like a coin flip because nobody practices them, or they don't practice them the way they need to. Mm-hmm. And it almost felt that way on some of the people who kicked. They just weren't that solid, confident kick that you would hope the player stepping up to take a PK at the end of the game to win it would do.
I think I actually read an article by, I forget who it was. It might have been Gerard, but don't quote me on that one. If it's not Gerard, go put it on Wikipedia, then it's true. He said, what I do when I do penalty kicks is I've trained myself to just go walk up there, just run up to the ball in a split second, make up my mind, and just hit it as hard as I can onto the goal. And if, that's the strategy he uses, and, you've seen, like, was it Oliver Kahn who had the iPod like about 10 years ago that he looked up what his opposing team had done, and there's like the stratagem used by Louis van Gaal in the World Cup. So there's a bunch of things that you can do.
Jimmy Nelson in the Sporting Kansas City won the finals. He had his paper to try and psych people out. So there's mind games to it. I just think by the time that United goes into it, it's either team. It's either team.
Then it's very hard to say that the team with the most talent, the best team is going to win in a PK. It's going to be the team that gets it in the back of the net the most.
I feel awful that it was Pitch who missed the last one. I feel awful. He's our captain. He's done a good job for us this year. I really respect the man very much. And, right. Well, anyway, I think on that note, again, a special thanks to all of you who shared a stand with us. It is a wonderful time to be there with all of you. I'm going to be waiting until April. Come to the Dark Clouds awards dinner. I believe it's on the 22nd, but don't quote me on that. Go look it up. It's on the 22nd. It's on the 22nd. Come to that. Come to the Silver Linings volunteer events through the winter. There's some talk about having other social events, like maybe going to other sports games, going to maybe, I want to do karaoke. I like karaoke. Come with me to karaoke. Hey, I like singing. Go figure. But I hope to see you all there. Keep watching To United Fans. Quick reminders, follow us on Twitter @2UnitedFans. Find us on YouTube, youtube.com/2UnitedFans, and that's TWO, by the way, in every case. If you're on Facebook, like us, 2UnitedFans. And how do we find the Loon Call?
The Loon Call, you can follow us on Twitter. Alex Schieferdecker does an amazing job managing that for the most part. Every once in a while, I accidentally post from it. But mostly it's him.
What's the address?
At the Loon Call.
Okay.
And then the website is thelooncall.com.
Great. And where do we find you on Twitter?
At Bill _MK, because Bill MK was taken.
Bastards.
Yeah, some guy out
I'm
there.
gonna bleep that out now. Jeez. Well, thank you again for joining us. Keep following to United fans. We will see you very soon. Thank you again, Bill, for joining
Thank
us.
you
as
for
well.
having me. It was fantastic.
I'm Notch. He's Kyle. This is To United fans signing out. Bye bye.